order. Start off with our roll call.
Okay, Delaware County, Joe Cazzola.
Here.
Ryan Hale.
Here.
Pat Delameter.
Here.
Maggie Wilson.
Here.
Gold Star for Delaware County. Fulton County, Jack Farquhar.
Here.
Mike Tracy.
Here.
The Gold Star. Hamilton County, Joyce Belidi is excused because of arthritis, unfortunately. Phil Belidi present. Susan Franco is excused. Gary Wicks.
Here.
Montgomery County, Tom Pasquarelli.
Here.
Mickey Swartz.
Here.
Trish Green is excused. Tony Agresta.
Here.
Siegel County, Sid Chase.
Here.
Beth McGowan.
Here.
Dr. Markowitz.
Here.
Rich Kirschman is excused. Schoharie County, Ed Brandt is excused. Phil Beavers.
Here.
Ed Hillenbrand. Here. Dr. Funk Valois is excused. Mark Zeke.
Present.
Lou Jones.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Lionheart.
Here.
We have a quorum and then some, sir.
All right, thank you. Phil had sent out the minutes to our April 16th, or I'm sorry, March 16th meeting. Hopefully everybody had a chance to review them. Any questions certainly can be directed towards him. If not, I will take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Second. Yeah.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Introduction of guests.
Introduction of guests. Let me start off with a distinguished guest indeed who we have with us today. Lee Burns.
Here, here.
Department of Health EMS Bureau Director. Lee, you're welcome. Very nice to see you. You know, with Joe Farrell, they're also, I believe, with the Department of Health EMS. Something like that, right? Our youth is here. John McMillan, Bill Dunham, Rich Knapp, Country Sweet, and Beatrice Meat. Did I get the name right, Beatrice?
Mete, that's close
I'm
enough.
sorry, I have a problem with that name. I am very sorry, because so many people have a problem with my last name and how it's pronounced. I try to be sensitive about that. I apologize. Anybody else? Did I leave anyone out? Welcome one and all to our guests.
Lee, would you like to address the council? Or speak with us?
We'd love to have you say a few words.
I'm not good with a few words, just a few. So I've been visiting with regional councils since I got a car that actually stops. So it's a really good thing because I was visiting with the regional council up north and I put my foot on the brake and it didn't. So that gets me out and keeps me out of trouble, sort of. A couple of quick, not so quick things. As you know, the governor and the legislature have come to an agreement and signed a new budget for fiscal year 17-18. As always, the budget has been cut. We are finally figuring out kind of how this peels out for the Bureau and the EMS community. Our training funds are fairly stable. There's a small cut. Our cash ceiling remains the same though, so that is a huge plus. On the not so plusy side, it's split into two. It used to be, for those of you, many of you may recall this because some of you are been around a while. How's that, Sid? It used to be we're a special revenue account, and by law we're split into our allocation, which should be in the $19 million. It isn't. It's split between training money and then the other half. So the law says half of all of the money allotted to the Department for Emergency Medical Services is to go to the direct provision of training. The governor's changed that, and interestingly has not altered the finance law, but so now we have what's called aid to localities, and then the other side of, which should be a half, but it isn't, is called state operations. So on the aid to localities, that's primarily training, and the regional councils come out of aid to localities, as does the program agencies funding. So that remains pretty much stable. On the other side, funding for everything else, including all of our other contracts, is state operations. And we've been severely severely cut. So not really, you know, we'll see how this works out. It's not really good news for us, and I've decided, and you know, having done this just for a little while now, in general, that you know, in state government, everyone says, oh, well, you know, if you run out of money, don't worry, you won't run out of money. And it's like a shell game. So I said to the people above me, I said, well, if it's such a great shell game, why don't you just tell me we have $25 million and you know, since we'll never run out of money. So they were like, yeah. So again, we'll see how this works for us. The state operations side ended up being a $3.3 million cut, which is significant. So what I would say for your training folks is that it is, you know, just as a general rule, make sure that your training programs are vouchering in a timely fashion. And it's not that necessarily that they're not going to get paid. That's not what I'm saying. But what happens, the state thinks in its fiscal year, which is April 1st to March 31st. They also think in the federal fiscal year, which is September 30th or October 1st to September 30th. They don't really think in the school year, which is, you know, September to June. And our EMS training programs really run in school year philosophy. And as a result, they cross over fiscal years. So as looking at Howard, when he is trying to figure out his finances, his paramedic programs run really through 2.5 fiscal years, pretty much, state fiscal years. So it's very, you know, we're trying to get a grip on how that all works, and we've been doing that now for a lot of years. One of the reasons that I'm wandering around the state, besides trying to desperately get out of Albany, is that, and this, Dr. Leibhardt and I have been having this conversation since he walked in. Our EMS community, or as Phil always says, you know, our colleagues in EMS, we are across the state. EMS is in distress, and it is extremely concerning. There are places now that when they dial 911 for ambulances, they're not going to come because they don't exist anymore. And from our calculations, in the last 5 years, in 2012, 2 ambulances closed, 11 ambulance services closed, 13 ambulance services closed, 21 ambulance services closed. In 16, 28 ambulances closed, one of which was TransCare, which not that I had, you know, dark hair before TransCare, but oh my God, did that age up. So TransCare, I mean, I know TransCare's on your radar because they held a chunk of your region, Delaware County, but that kind of thing was never to happen. You know, an ambulance service like that, that's never going to happen until the then president called and said, you know, tonight at 1900 hours, we're done. And they had 240 ambulances on their road. So it is not just, you know, East Elbow Rescue Squad in rural New York. The biggest ambulance service in the state shuttered. And what, you know, on the brighter side, there's 2 brighter sides to this. One was those providers who worked for that ambulance service, and they had, you know, they had been affected by the fiscal issues for years. At 1900 hours, they didn't just get out of their ambulance services, light them on fire, and get out of their trucks, light them on fire, and walk away. They finished their tours. They secured their vehicles. They secured the station, and they were unbelievably gracious. Unbelievably gracious. I mean, we were concerned. Fidney was concerned that they would really torch their trucks in the Bronx and go away. Not a one. And the second thing that speaks highly to the EMS provider DNA is that when TransCare shut down, every other ambulance service affected by it stepped up their game. And at the end, no one did not get an ambulance. No one did not get an ambulance, and that's remarkable. We were very concerned about the Bronx because TransCare had a huge footprint in the Bronx. So the long moral to the story is we in the EMS community, and this is kind of, I've taken this on myself because no one else really wants to stand near me. I'm looking for Kevlar if anyone has any extra. I think that as a group, we have kept our stress to ourselves. When you go from ambulance squad to ambulance squad, everybody looks at me and says, well, that's not us, it's got to be the guy next door. When in reality, it is you. And if you're in good shape today, you're going to be taking over the distressed agencies that are near you, which is as everyone in this room knows, you don't have a ton of excess capacity, and now you have to step up your game, and there are fiscal consequences to that, and there are personnel consequences to that. So it is everybody's problem, truly. If you were at Howard Symposium, the Cobleskill Symposium, in that lovely warm day in January, I have a whole lecture on this, and interestingly, I looked across the room, and as I started with, don't look at me and say, that's not me. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. Who the hell does this person from the state think she is? I said, don't sit there, and if you say that out loud, I'll come and smack you on your head. And at the end, and I've kept Howard in the loop too, I've gotten a lot of interesting email from people who were in the audience who weren't going to come up to me that day, mostly because it was the end of the day and they wanted to go have a beer. But the other was, they're at a point now where they're in such trouble they don't know what to do. And I've had some very good conversations. I will say this, I have established, people say to me, well, what do you think what should we be doing? I have 3 suggestions. All of them are at my own peril, but I'm looking towards the EMS community for help. I mean, I think that across this state we have intellect, that is second to none, and somebody out there has to have some solutions going on. There has to be good things going on, and we've seen some very good things. One of which is, and this has become a reason to wear Kevlar, but ambulance services have to examine the possibility of consolidating with each other. They have to. You have to look at your neighbors, and you have to figure out how to do this in the best way. And if you're looking for a decent model right now, Central Oneida, Steve DeJura and his gang in Oneida County, I think EMS1 had an article on what he's been doing, and it wasn't his dream to take on 2 more ambulance services. In his heart of hearts, it might have been, because it's all about ego. But in reality, from a business model perspective, it's going to be interesting. So, then we have an ambulance service in Essex County, both 2 fire departments. I say they ejected their ambulance services and they consolidated, but Joe would argue that they planned and planned and planned and planned, and they have put together a successful but yet extremely rural ambulance service on the beautiful shores of Champlain. So there's a lot going on, but what happens is that all of us are very entrenched in what is ours, and it's very hard to see that change. And I know that. I was a member of Saratoga Ambulance for 30 plus years, and we've, gone. So another reality is that municipalities have to step up their game too, whether they become ambulance services themselves or they contract with ambulance services. They have to step up their game. And the third is hospitals are consolidating and creating health systems, and they need ambulance service, and they're gonna have to figure out a way to sustain ambulance service so that they can move their patients around their system. So that's 3 possibilities. So I'm open to suggestions, seriously. You know how to find me, because you all do.
I'd just like to jump in there. There was a time in New York State where the rural hospitals were closing, sort of like EMS agencies are now closing. So you had rural hospitals shutting their doors across the state, and it was in our backyard. It was the O'Connor Hospital, I think, was on the chopping block, and it was happening from Albany. So the Commissioner of Health thought it was necessary to do that, and they, with support of Senator Cook at the time, there was a commission created on rural health. I think that's what the title of it was. And it was posted as, you know, so it had legislative support to pull together the state to talk about. Well, first they created a moratorium on hospital closures. No more hospital closures. We're going to talk about this. And they got people from Colorado to talk about, you know, how to CON. They don't have CON in Colorado. So they brought in sort of nation input to how to configure the system, how to think about the system. And I wonder if it's not a good time to suggest something like that. So you just gave out 3 options that you see. There's probably 3 more options out there. There's probably models within the state and without the state that have already tackled this. And it probably requires, you know, some high-level support to just get the conversation around the room. But I wonder if that wouldn't be a good statewide effort to say, you know what, we need to think about this, because that's an exponential failure rate. EMS is failing exponentially, right? So what that means, I think, you know, if you went into the database, you would see that call to response is also failing exponentially. So the health impact of that, I would suggest it is probably measurable. It's probably, of the people who called for chest pain, many of them are in VFib by the time we got there. So you know, he was surmised that if you didn't get to them when they were still having their chest pain before they coded, because we know that half of MIs don't arrive to the hospital, right? So you got a 50% mortality rate for MIs before they even get to the hospital. So it's, as a disease entity, it's probably measurable. But those are the sort of the things that are running through my mind, is that, you know, we struggle, we have bake sales, we have, you know, some diehard volunteers, but I think across the state, the system is collapsing. So you have large municipalities, Richfield Springs, calling on little old Fly Creek to, you know, mutual aid to it. You know, it's like the baby, I don't know why, maybe they have more retirees or something, but they're jumping up to Richfield Springs. The distances are getting longer, the response time is longer. And, you know, we're all sort of watching this across the state, and we just told us it's not just rural communities, right? EMS has always been sort of the stepchild to the other, you know, services. So maybe it's a good time to sort of, find legislative supporter, somebody with clout. Schumer would be nice, but
I think he's got his hands full.
yeah, I think he may have other, you know, North Korea might be on his mind. But,
Among other things.
but you know, to put it together in a educational way, in a way we could bring in speakers, throw up models. There are people who design EMS systems for a living, right? We were just talking about one.
Senator Seward likes to do that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
I just throwing it out as an idea to,
Yeah.
because if you don't get the attention of the people at the top, you know, that it's a crisis. You have to label it a crisis. You have to engage them with, you know, I don't know how long this is going to go on, but, you know, it's sort of like treating septic shock. You know, like, when are you going to give the pressor? You know, it's like, and antibiotics.
Yeah.
So I think we should realize that that's what's going on at the highest level, and say, you know, we need help, and we can't bubble it up. You know, we can't keep selling cookies to fix it. You know, so it has to be some kind of structural relook at how EMS systems are designed if they want to enable health systems to, get on board and create their own interfacility transport services so they can own their bit of it. Those are the ideas that might come out if you involve, say Northwell. Northwell runs its own EMS service. They have 26 hospitals. They respond to 911. They have an ED standalone in lower Manhattan. So they're doing a lot, and they're doing very sort of, perhaps too far in the edge kind of activities that involve medics in the home with a PCP on the phone. We talk about community paramedicine, but where, how, show me. So I don't think we're not gonna be able to fix the safety net that is frayed from the safety net aspect. It's gonna have to be higher level thinking, higher organizational support, looking down on the system and saying, what makes sense? Every little rural county has its own 911 thing. They can't manage it, they can't fund it, they don't run it in the way that we can actually interrogate, like in 911, it's like, well, what time did that call go? Well, we don't really know. So every county does it differently. And they don't talk to each other. County legislatures, they're like the most notorious, right? So you don't have Schoharie talking to Delaware, talking to Otsego about, well, geez, maybe we should do like a singular E911 dispatching center with a tri-county ALS service. There's other ways to cut the mustard that will save people money, because it's all about ultimately money. And you have all the politics of fire departments and other agencies involved. But so the only way to cut through some of that, I think, would be to have support from the top to say, make a diagnosis. It's in shock. The system's in shock. It's going to die. It is dying. So are you going to respond to that, or are you just going to hold it at most form? Here, just sign right here. Do not resuscitate EMS in New York State. So I think we should try to resuscitate it. And I think it would require a lot of hands-on people from outside of this council. I think every council is probably having the same conversation. Sort of.
I am with every council. Some are better than others. I mean, I think there's also, one of the things, I think the EMS community, because we haven't come to grips with this as a reality on our own, we've not been able to have meaningful conversations at the local level with our local municipalities and the counties. And one of the really big issues, and this will sound oddly familiar to you, is as the minimum wage rate goes up, it's going to be a huge burden to the EMS system should it actually happen for EMS providers. And right now, honestly, it doesn't matter if you're a volunteer or you do it for a living. You're not, there's no money in it. You can't afford to do it for a living, as all of you know, since you're trying very hard. And until those kinds of issues are adequately addressed, and it's cascading in that the reimbursement rates are so low, with God knows no future of them going up, and all of these things affect. But the workforce is aging, and there are not a ton of young people coming in behind us. There's a lot that has to be examined. It's not just one conversation. So,
is there any discussion pushing using legislation to make EMS an essential service in the state?
There's discussion, but it's mostly in the EMS world. And one of the questions, I nag a series of attorneys, and you could do this too, start nagging. When you start looking at the general municipal law, the way that fire and police is worded is very bizarre, and it's almost not all that compelling. Their municipalities don't necessarily have to have fire departments and police departments. So I don't really understand how, and I think it's because it's old and outdated wording, but it would make sense to push that. I don't, again, I are a government. I don't, unless I'm summoned, I don't have conversations with which does not prohibit you from having conversations with legislators. But I think, you know, all of you are sitting here, and I've known most of you for my adult life, pretty much. Sorry, Pat.
We have matching hair.
I know. Better to have this than no hair at all, I say, huh?
Well, I don't know about that.
Anyway, so it's affecting you, and it's hurting you every day. So, I mean, you know, it was in the fall. Maggie had me down to Delaware County, and that was a really interesting meeting. And there was a combination of folks who are like, yeah, we're in trouble, we need to do something, and as many of them were saying, nope, everything's great. So on the plus, brighter side, and this is huge, and it's huge for you. The trauma system in New York is making major changes. I mean, earth-shattering, like I never thought this would happen, and I could take absolutely no credit for it. New York State has designated trauma centers for 25 years. And when they started, it was the national standard. And they continue we've continued to designate trauma centers in the ensuing time period. And as trauma, its science and practice has changed, New York, you know, we're on the cutting edge, it's still 25 years old. So the State Trauma Advisory Committee met with the commissioner and decided that we should move towards the verification process that the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma has, and it's a national standard. And just awesome results. The hospitals, it's intrinsic from inside the hospitals, they're doing it. Bassett is verified as a level 2, which is absolutely outstanding, and it's just a ton of work, and the trauma service and the whole hospital system gets credit for it. But how this affects you is that you have a broader range of trauma services, the system is being shored up, and it's totally done by the trauma community. So really, right now, we're trying to adopt new regulations to catch up with the hospitals. But it's been a huge success, and it's very exciting. And now I am the EMS director and trauma coordinator, much to my utter horror, every day. And the trauma surgeons haven't tried to kill me yet, and I believe they would know how. And we actually, St. Luke's in Newburgh became a provisional trauma center in order to get all of their ducks in a row. And they were successfully verified as a level 3 trauma center in the Hudson Valley, and that's huge. They were although they got lots of trauma, they were never a trauma center. So the work that they did in you know, structural, literally they built operating rooms, but they changed the way that the infrastructure of their hospital operates in order to successfully achieve this. Couple quick things. Have you heard that the EpiPen law has changed? Okay. Do you want to hear that if you haven't? The bottom line for EMS is that there really is no process. The process has been removed from the law. So I say pretty much any Joe Bag of Donuts in the world can go get an EpiPen as long as someone prescribes it, and they can use it on a person for whom it has not been prescribed, as long as they've been trained. And the training, it's either a commissioner-approved program or a nationally acceptable program. There's only really the EpiPen manufacturer has a program, and then the Red Cross has a program, and that's it. So the brighter side is EpiPens are still really expensive, and we don't think that Joe is going to go spend $800 on a couple of EpiPens to run around shooting people with them, hopefully. But it's enabled daycare centers to get EpiPens, so if you have licensed daycare centers in your territories, camps still can do it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of hanging on to the old-fashioned thing with our given services. while there is check and inject, there's still a lot of ambulance services who have been comfortable with EpiPens and want to stay that way. We're happy. Less possibility for mistakes, but so that's that. We issued or reissued the ketamine and fentanyl policy statements so that they actually match what is protocol now. Much to Mary's
Tom, are you going to
happiness.
attack?
I'm not.
Huh?
Okay. I just asked Tom if he was ready to attack.
Why? There's a whole new form though. There's a consolidated form.
It's consolidated into 2 pages. So there's one standardized form. So you have how many substances in your narc box, Tom? 4, right?
4.
So you have to fill out 8 pages worth of paperwork when you do reporting.
But it's the same form. You don't need
It's
a
the
different
same
form
form.
for each thing.
There's a lot of, I've received a lot of phone calls from people complaining that we changed the forms and didn't know them. Everyone's known it's been in the works, but somehow this didn't get out. So if this quarter, if you're doing a fentanyl or a ketamine report, or if you're a semi-annual only user, try to look at the forms, fill out as much as you can and send them in to us. We want everyone to switch over to the new forms. If you can't fill it in, we understand, but give us the basic demographics, of what you have, what you've used, balance your checkbook in simple English for your controlled substances. And then try to switch over to the new forms and the data collection that we're asking for. We changed some of the requests. One of the things we're asking for is how many pediatric patients are you using narcotics on? That got into a discussion with someone from downstate. That, well, what is pediatrics? Because AHA says this, everything says this, and I'm like, what are your protocols say? Since controlled substances are administered via protocol, follow your protocols for age determination. We're trying to take a kinder, gentler approach to this, but still get all the information. The big change is you're going to see your medical director's signature is now required. You guys order controlled substances under a DOC's DEA license, and it's about time that the docs knew what was being done under their license.
Present company excluded.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying, yeah. So you may be hunted down for signatures. But I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily.
I mean, I think the
Huh?
Those new forms are on the internet?
And they're in a PDF fillable format, yes.
Yeah, I found them yesterday.
we'll send a note out to the REMSCOs. I just didn't get a chance to do it. And fortunately, I didn't do it because I had used the wrong link in both forms. So we had to update the website before we could get it out anyway. But I mean, honestly, particularly if you're using an electronic PCR platform, this is a no-brainer. I mean, you can index your data and just write it in. I mean, the information that this form is asking actually may be more useful to you guys than it is to us. But I think what we want to do is really be able to look at, controlled substance usage.
The other thing is you're asked to hold on to the forms, which isn't a change, for 5 years. So if Phil decides, or Gus, hey, we want to see how many administrations of whatever were given, the agency should be able to turn those forms into Phil in a reasonable amount of time, and all that information will be available in a heartbeat. So we're trying to make it more end user friendly also.
And my last thing is a reminder is Vital Signs is in Rochester this year. Please, please, please come. It is the weekend of...
The weekend just before Halloween.
Yeah, yeah.
7/28.
Yeah.
And the EMS Memorial is 23rd.
Yeah. And you'll be hearing from us if you haven't already. Actually, Mary generally calls and...
Donna mailed out the letters for the EMS Memorial to all the agencies March 28th. We held off. We sent them a little bit closer to the event instead of the beginning. Usually we send them in February and people say they don't get them. So we sent them a little later. If you guys could come, let us know. I mean, there's a few players here that usually come, because otherwise we make phone calls.
I mean, we moved the ceremony to be on a Tuesday. Tuesday is legislative day. That means the legislators are in town. And we invite all of them. Last year, tons of them showed up. I mean, And the next thing I knew, the dais had like 20 of them. And then I had to know who they were to introduce them, because I don't. So to having, you know, our dream is to bury that plaza in EMS vehicles. And we're doing okay. I mean, there's a ton of trucks out there. You know, it does get the farmer's market all in a twist, but oh well. I think, Mr. Chairman, unless you have questions,
Anybody have anything?
I've hit the high points.
Thank you. Don't be a stranger.
Thank
Come
you,
more
Lee.
often.
We love to have you, Lee.
We're not far from all of you.
Not far at all.
Not far enough, anyway.
A world away, but not that far.
All right. Correspondence. Correspondence was distributed. Certainly, if anyone has any questions, they can ask Phil. If not, is there anything you want to address in particular?
On the correspondence, not really, no. It's going to speak for itself. Do take a look at it. There are some interesting little notes in the correspondence which I don't repeat under the Secretary's report. So I do like it to take a look at them. As you see, there is a lot of correspondence. I don't really routine stuff like getting a bill in the mail or paying a bill. I don't put that in, obviously, but the rest of this is kind of interesting to look at.
I don't, certainly after everything that Lee explained, I don't have a report. So we'll move right on to the Secretary's report.
All righty. On April the 18th, a course sponsor renewal paperwork was received from GAVAC. I would like to make, and I looked it over, found it complete. I'd like to make a motion that this council approve the course sponsor renewal paperwork for the Greater Amsterdam Volunteer Ambulance Corps. I'll ask for a second on that motion.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? I'm going to have Sid, just for the record, I'm going to have Sid sign this application as I'm the course sponsor administrator.
Okay, on April 20th, today, April 20th, course sponsor renewal paperwork was received from SUNY Cobleskill. That's a small educational institution just down the road away from us, so I'm told. That appears to be completely in order also, so I'd like to make a motion that this council approve the course sponsor renewal paperwork for SUNY Cobleskill.
Second to that motion? Second. Sid. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Carried.
A small item of expenditure is going to become necessary. The camera we use for recording our meeting webcasts is going to need replacing. It is beginning to develop some software issues. It's still working, as you see, but it's beginning to develop some little software issues where there's a dissonance between the actual video and the audio and so forth and so on. So I'd like permission to purchase a new camera. Our budget can stand it. The cost will be about $700. We have to do our webcasts on a monthly basis, as you know, or on a meeting basis, I should say. So I would like to make that in the form of a motion that that would be enabled to purchase a new camera.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining?
Final item, on April 19th, as of April 19th, yesterday, 17 of our regional ALS agencies have reported as being 2017 protocol ready. There are 38 ALS ambulance agencies and 4 ALS first responder agencies in this region. And of those 42, 17 have now reported, which may sound awfully lacking. It isn't really, because they include all the larger agencies in the region. So all the techs in this region have now been qualified to practice under the 2017 protocols. Some of the agencies, some of the smaller agencies that they work with, in addition to working with the larger agencies, have not signed in yet, so I will be nudging them beginning tomorrow and early next week, and I'll give you a further report on it.
As we have been nudging.
Right. The nudging kind of goes downhill, like so many things. And we have no notice of enforcement actions received this month, and that, sir, is my report.
All right. Right in the trigger.
Okay. The report of the cash flow and balance sheet has been distributed to all the members, and there are still some copies here. Members of our group first have received detailed cash flow balance sheets and register reports, plus copies of the canceled checks as per our review arrangements agreed on to meet audit standards. Their report is, Mr. Chairman, sir?
It was all in order. Jack's not out, that's not,
Yeah, Jack had to go, he had to hear a case.
the report was all in order.
On April the 1st, a claim for payment in the amount of $5649.02 and supporting paperwork was forwarded to Tom Bahana at DOH for the council contract period from January the 1st through March 31st. On the same day, a claim for payment in the amount of $1015.10 and supporting paperwork was also forwarded to him for the program agency contract for the same period. The amount vouchered in that case was supplemental to the claim for payment sent in on March the 1st in the amount of $41,175.32. This latter had been forwarded early at Tom Bahana's request to all the program agencies at the time. On April 12th, we received a check in the amount of $46,824.31. And we have now signed up for direct payment from the State Controller's Office. Refreshingly easy to do under the need for the new state financial system, electronics. And so we will be receiving our payments now probably several days earlier and receiving them directly into our savings account. And that sort is my report.
All right, thank you. Can I get a motion to accept that treasurer's report? Pat? Second? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions.
I will abstain as a staff member.
Committee reports, regional program update.
Really, I have nothing to report.
All right. Training committee met this morning. You want to give that report?
I'm going to ask Howard Youth to give a little report on the training. Are you there, Howard?
I am now. How little would you like to report?
Joyce is not able to be here today, and she regrets that because of arthritic conditions in her neck and her shoulder. The trip back and forth would not have been difficult for her, but sitting for a period of time would have been very uncomfortable. So we had a speakerphone training committee meeting, and Howard was instrumental in carrying on the conversation, so I'm going to let him report on what we have hanging there.
Very quickly, there's a CAU on June 3rd that's going to be in Cobleskill that has an interesting topic that Joyce has worked with State EMS on, and it's going to be taking a look at the most popular regionally used EMT text and comparing it to the New York State Education Guidelines / standards and seeing what's missing so that people can educators can get an idea of really when they're lesson mapping for their classes, how much material they're not covering either properly or not covering, period. And in coordination with SUNY Cobleskill, the region's going to offer a CLI course daytimes during the week. It's going to be a Tuesday and Wednesday, June 27th and 28th. That's pending state course approval at this point. The application's turned in, and I've had communication with the state office. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be approved. However, it's pending state approval. A save the date for that pending approval was sent out to the state course sponsors and regional faculty, and there seems to be a high amount of interest. If you guys know of anybody who's interested, tell them early, tell them soon. We're going to cap the class at 30.
I'm going to send out these flyers once again, and I'll send them out tomorrow to everybody, and I'll post them on our website also.
And I'll give you updated flyers. So actually, if you want to hold off on that, I'll shoot them to you Monday probably.
Great. Great.
The only other two things that came up for discussion was when I came in today, somebody approached me with a question for Joyce when she called, which was after last REMAC and REMSCO meeting and discussion on specialty care transport and RSI regionally, did the training committee want to sit down and make a recommendation to the MAC and or the REMSCO for accepted minimum standards for education programs for both of those? The SCT was an easy thing for us to come to a unanimous agreement on, with a simple recommendation that it meets or exceeds the Baltimore curriculum for specialty care transport or critical care transport, whatever you want to look at it. So that's an easy minimum standard that we would ask that if you're going to adopt one, that be it. And when it came down to RSI or MFI, whichever way you'd like to call it, there was discussion that included that this is a statewide paramedic level educational objective standard within the curriculum. This is not an additional skill, this is a base level skill. Granted, it's an important skill, and it's an important procedure with critical decision making that's involved, but the original education still should be there no matter what program they come out of. Having said that, we wanted to talk a little bit, and Maggie Wilson's going to lead a subcommittee task force action group, work group thing, club meeting, to come up with some recommendations for perhaps time, length, and content, and then come back to this body if you guys are interested in looking at a minimum standard for RSI education. The discussion really came back around to there's so many agencies that are smaller that may not have the resources. The best way to do this could be in collaboration with larger agencies. For example, if I'm writing with a small agency and we're doing RSI and there's only 4 paramedics in our agency and GAVAC is doing a RSI recredentialing course, there should be no reason why my agency can't contract with GAVAC to send our folks there, obviously for a fee, but to be able to contract for education to do that and maintain a standard. And I offered on behalf of the college to work with anybody who wants. And that was it, sir.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Transportation standards.
Transportation standards in the matter of the Wells Ambulance Transfer of Authority, we're still awaiting some final minor changes. In the matter of the Pittsfield, the town of Pittsfield CON, on March the 22nd, the entire package, having been received from Pittsfield for a 3rd time, was forwarded to Dana Jonas via the Health Commerce System Secure File Transfer Protocol, which is a real nifty way of moving a large amount of information in a secure manner. On March 23rd, Dana advised us that the application was complete, in his humble opinion. That means it's complete. On March 24th, the application was sent in CD format to the members of our committee. It was too large for most email boxes, but the secure file transfer system can take up to 2 gigs of memory. In any event, since the state of New York has said that the application is complete and the 60-day process can begin once we say it's complete, I would like to make a motion that this council consider the Town of Pittsfield Certificate of Need application to be complete, and that the CON process as delineated by public health law and policy begin. So I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
Can you give a second to that motion?
No second.
Sid? Any discussion? Yeah, I know Maggie and I had several email conversations in regards to mainly the narcotic part of it, but Joe answered that question this afternoon, so I think that we're good with this finally.
Okay,
So all in favor of declaring this application complete, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried.
thank you. So we will schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, May the 10th at 7 p.m. here at the Holiday Inn. Publication of the required legal notices will take place in the Gloversville Leader-Herald, the Daily Gazette, that's formerly known as the Schenectady Gazette, and the Oneonta Star. These three publications have been chosen by us some years ago as venues for publication of legal notices in the region. A certified mailing to all ambulance agencies and all municipalities in Otsego County will also be sent advising of this hearing as per protocol and policy. And a final vote of this council on the matter can be scheduled for the regular meeting of May 18th. Stenographic recording for both the public hearing and the May council meeting will be arranged as per state regulation. My report, sir.
All right. State council report. I don't have a whole lot. I know that I sit in the safety committee, as well as the finance committee. The safety committee's had several emails going back and forth regarding ambulance construction and the revision of the operations and driving policies. But other than that, I don't have anything until we meet May 9th and 10th.
I will not be able to be there, so.
REMAC.
No updates, reports.
County reports. Start off with Hamilton. All good up there, snow gone?
Not completely, but most.
Freezing, sap's running, freezing every morning.
We have a hyacinth blooming, or budding, pardon me, budding in my front yard.
Spring is here.
Now, for most people, that wouldn't be any news.
Like the swallows.
It's kind of discouraging when you come south, you see all these leaves popping out.
Right.
We go back home, we still got snowbank.
Come look at the hyacinth. It's coming.
Fulton County, Montgomery County, we had nothing. Business as usual. Schoharie? Nothing. Seago?
I see a trend.
Nothing new?
Nothing there. Delaware?
Well, we're finishing up our EMT classes for the year. They're all testing out tonight. So that'll be a busy night. That's pretty much it. And then the master's group was summer and everything.
Old business. We had any outstanding. So, right into new business.
New business, I received an email from a member of an agency asking if I could just make mention of the fact that when another agency intercepts to provide ALS, and the tech from the intercepting unit gets on board the requesting unit, the second ambulance, the one that carried the tech to the scene, should not continue the trip to the hospital following the first ambulance with lights and siren. He said that a lot of his email was anecdotal. He said that he understands this happens a lot and he's observed it a few times. Keeping him deliberately anonymous as also the agency he belongs to. I said I would bring this up. If once an intercepting agency has delivered their medic to the first agency making the request, there's no longer any need for them to continue on rolling hot to the hospital following the first ambulance. Just that comment.
Thank you. Any other new business?
Did you guys elect a EMS manager for your county?
I'm sorry, you don't know?
Steve Cook elected something?
Oh, Montgomery County.
Montgomery County.
Months, EMS coordinator, he's the new EMS
He
coordinator.
took the place of Sean Busek, he's the EMS
I
coordinator,
just saw it announced recently.
county EMS coordinator.
It was just in the paper yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Just a week ago yesterday. That didn't mean it happened yesterday, but it was just in the paper yesterday.
3-4 months ago.
Was it really? No, no.
It's like the Saratoga.
Under new business, there's quite a few spots in the protocols, the new collaborative protocols, that put things on the region. And I don't know if they've all been addressed. Howard touched on a couple of them earlier, or just in his report about SCT and RSI, about regional policies and procedures. The minimums of medications, I don't know if we addressed all of those yet. We have.
We addressed some of them.
We addressed some, I don't believe we addressed all.
No, we addressed all. We addressed some.
Nasal intonation, if regionally approved. Some things were regionally approved before. Do they carry over now, or do we need to do all that again? I have more questions than I have answers on these things. Stemming, return to spontaneous circulation, transport to a primary facility that has primary angioplasty, if the transport time is less than what the region says. There's a lot of blanks that need to be filled in, whether it's going to be this meeting or preferably next meeting when we have a REMAC maybe. A lot of them say regionally approved, and then some put the bonus or the onus right on the REMAC. Advanced EMTs and trained in tactical EMS may do needle chest decompression, must be approved by the REMAC. You know, these are very new things. The ketamine and Haldol, they were approved before. Did we just carry those over? Excited delirium protocol, any use of it must go to the medical director or the regional QA committee whatever the regional procedure says. So, what's the regional procedure? Hypoglycemia protocol. Regional procedure for letting someone sign off if you give them any medications, including oral glucose. Interfacility transport. As the meds that's spelled out, this is regional things for that. The SCT that Howard mentioned. RSI, Howard mentioned, coming up with the policies and procedures. Then under, I mentioned nasal intubation, if regionally approved. And then there's a subsection under there for ongoing paralysis for the post-intubation patient that says it's only standing order only for aeromedical. Is that not counting the RSI approved agencies when the region has a procedure on it?
All right, those are all, so you got quite a list there.
And it's just the tip of the iceberg.
I think that's a great list. I think those are all really good questions for the rematch.
Okay.
So what I would suggest you do is copy Phil all those questions, and anybody else that wants to enter the list.
Not a problem. And so the question was, some spell out REMAC specifically,
Right.
others just say region.
Right, no, but you've studied the protocols, you've isolated the areas where we region needs to make a decision. It'd be good to get them all in a bolus out in advance. So the REMAC, we're not taking, that list would take a while to get through, I think, unless we have some time before.
I got no problem if you guys come in the room without decisions made, just so
Yeah,
we know.
and you might want to prioritize them, the ones that are most burning in terms of, not controversy, but conflict. We're already doing it and we're not covered, or something like that.
You can shoot me an email with the bullet points. I'll get it right out to the REMAC. I'll get it out to everybody.
Tony, if you copy me, I sit on the Collaborative Protocol Committee. I'll just forward it to Dr. Daly also.
Okay, are we the first region addressing this, or has Remo already done it? I see it. I know we're a big fan. If a region has already addressed these, we could just take what they've done, and which is a great idea.
There's a CMAC meeting in Troy in May too, that some of this will probably be discussed at, that might be worth attending.
I mean, the stuff that's those, I've gotten a lot of calls from REMAC chairs who have wanted to do things to the collaborative protocol, and they expected me to say no. The REMACs can, under the law, have a great deal of latitude with the protocols, in terms of this is procedural stuff that your region should manage, because historically you've always done that. But the REMACs can change the protocols in spite of the fact that you signed an MOU saying you wouldn't. But because you can by law, but the CMAC has to approve it. What we're going to
These aren't even, I'm talking changes.
Yeah, you're
they put a
talking,
bunch of things in there that says
yeah.
It's up to the region whether or not you do this.
And I would gather your list. And
they touted them as collaborative protocols, but then they said each region do what you want.
Well, there's certain things where the collaborative protocols break down, right? They don't know, it's hard to apply uniform standards about travel time.
Transport time for,
You're talking about a huge rural region, right? So time to PCI, nearest PCI might be 2 hours someplace in our region, right? So you can't say, so travel time, the pharmacy, the drugs on board is sort of dependent on travel time. How many shots of this are we going to have to give before we get to a hospital, right? So I think there's regional necessity to take a look at how does this apply in our region? Does it make sense? That's where the broad brush of I think that I like the collaborative protocols because they're addressing sort of the medical end of things. But when you get into the transport times, skill levels of the dominant skill level of your region, is this a medic thing in our region, or is it a critical care thing in our region? So those are the kinds of discussions we've had in the past, do the levels change based on necessity. So I think those are all great questions. We just need to sort of tackle them. I think if they seem relevant to the collaborative protocols per se, in other words, do all the regions ask the same questions about certain items, I think that would be useful to go back to the collaborative protocols, because it's it would be an iterative process for us to take, say, the AAREMS protocols back to the CMAC and say, right, this is the AAREMS modifications of the collaborative protocol.
That's what needs to happen.
Right, that's what would have to happen. So you know, less is better in terms of modifications to the protocol. So if we can identify what the key elements are, the really burning issues or must be answered questions, I think it would be a fairly perfunctory approval of the CMAC to say, you know, we're changing, you know, time, transport times to 1 hour versus 2 hours. Stroke is the other thing that I think, I'm not sure where the state is going with comprehensive stroke and identification of large vessel strokes in the field, but to listen to Dr. Cushman at the University of Rochester, that's probably the next area where EMS might be redirected based on clinical findings. So I think those are all like great questions, and we just need to get on our list and go through them. Is the state moving towards any kind of change? I just saw the stroke protocol. It looks pretty much like a buffed up version of the last one. So
Yeah, that's complicated.
okay, so we're not moving anywhere.
No, the hope is, what had happened is, there's a couple things. One is, there are BLS protocols in the collaborative, many of which conflict with the statewide BLS protocols. So we're meeting with a group of physicians in advance of the CMAC meeting to figure out how to move forward with managing that as an issue. And I gave them 3 different, choose one from column A, B, or C. I think the lawyers may have them choose a particular one. So the stroke protocol in the collaborative says 5 hours. The Coverdell Heart Association national standard is 3.5. But the BLS protocol says, if you're 3.5 hours from onset of symptoms to a stroke symptom. In a lot of your region, that's, somebody doesn't call till they're 3 hours and 52 minutes into this, so, but there's also an option to call for medical control. But 5 hours, the Coverdell research project thinks is too long, so we need to, what was sent out was a draft to revisit the stroke protocol. What happened at the last CMAC meeting was that the Medical Standards Committee reviewed it and liked it, and it went as a seconded motion to the CMAC to approve the Coverdell stroke when a group of physicians said, we don't like the way the oxygenation section, and they tabled it. Instead of talking about that in medical standards, we could have fixed that. They didn't do that, so they tabled it. So we sent it out in anticipation of untabling it at this meeting, which is what you saw.
They sent that out to everybody yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, in the Coverdale one, or the one that was sent to us yesterday in the email, it says if it's less than 3.5 hours, arrival less than 3.5 hours to a primary or a stroke center, take them there. It doesn't say anything about calling medical control.
Yeah, the box has.
The box says if it's over 3.5 hours, contact medical control.
Well, you should contact medical control whenever.
So I'm not wrong. Contact medical control under 3.5 hours. Thank you.
All right, any other new business?
Just quickly, just informational. I've been keeping this body and the REMAC advised. I met with Fulton Montgomery Community College again this morning before coming here in regards to running EMS courses there, because we had been asked to help them out with courses and enrollment's been low. We ran 2 originals and 2 refreshers over the course of the year at a loss, both of them. This past semester we tried to run another course with an enrollment minimum of 12 people combined between refresher and original, and they couldn't meet enrollments for either one, so we canceled the courses. FM still says, I met with their dean, their academic dean today, who's a phenomenal person, and they still say they want the courses there, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So I'm keeping in close communication with Tom regarding GABAX courses also, which right now you guys have a nice robust class, which is great, 22, 23, 20, there you go. That's probably the biggest numbers that we've seen in a long time.
It's our biggest class.
I continue to run free critical care rapid refreshers at the college. I also continue to cancel the courses because nobody enrolls in them. That's it. FM, we're probably going to give one more shot in spring, not in the fall. But if we end up canceling the course again, we're most likely going to pull our equipment and office space out of there and go back to Coleskill and concentrate on courses down there. We've had tons of people from the region come out and say we want this, but in talking to those people, they want it in their backyard, on their hours, for free. And as much as I'd love to teach an EMT course to you and your neighbor in your living room, it just doesn't work that way. It can't.
AEMT course?
Okay, so AEMT course. I would love to. I don't foresee doing that at FM. Originally, that was my hope in being able to turn around and get a couple EMT courses at FM up and running, and then be able to move some gear and some personnel in that direction, and run a regular AEMT course at that location. I'm not going to say no. It might end up being that way. We might end up doing an AEMT course in the spring at FM with an EMT refresher embedded in it, and EMT original and EMT refresher at Coleskill, but the numbers need to be there. So I know people are starting.
Are you getting any interest in the AEMT?
AEMT, yes, but again, also when you do that survey of when do you want it and where do you want it, it really comes down to the same thing. And I love the course. You guys know I'm a huge proponent of AEMT, but
I'm surprised it's not. I don't know. I guess I expected
it just needs to fiscally break even for us. That's it. We're not, we're SUNY college. We're not looking to make money off it, but it needs to break even. And keeping in mind that the reimbursement rate for it, as it currently exists, is less than EMT reimbursement.
I expected a huge interest
So,
in this region
and
the rural.
Well, the interest is there, but the interest is there right now mostly on a provider level. And I think the region, as we know from conversations here even, some of the agencies aren't quite sure what to do with it, or if they should do something with it, or if they want to do with it. I mean, Maggie's taught some good AEMT classes also, and we've had good provider feedback on it. I think it's a great level, and I think it works really well for supplementing ALS, paramedic level ALS in busier systems. And I think, absolutely, for rural volunteer agencies, it is a great way to get good care to your patients in your community. Yep. But again, it comes down to when do you run the class?
Numbers is a big thing.
That's
money.
it.
And it's the same with Hamilton County. We ran a couple courses at one time. We had like 37 people or something like that.
But that
two different courses.
Internet. Nobody wants.
And the money was there, so for those.
Right.
The course they're running now, I don't know, they got like 7 people or something. They had to go to the county supervisors to get money. They give them $5,000.
So I'm going to preface this with I'm not saying that this is going to happen. However, as the conversation's ensuing next to me, I might as well say what they're saying. We're looking at doing hybrid education courses. So envision an EMT refresher that is predominantly online didactic material that then you come in for 2-day-long EMT sessions, lab sessions with us, or an AEMT class where you're going to have to test out of material ahead of time for EMT and prove competency in it, and then do some online work. But there's been big pushback, especially from the more rural areas, about online education. So if it's done well, it can be very good as supplemental education to be paired with hands-on, we're all kinesthetic learners, right? We're all hands-on people. So I think if you do enough lab component with it, you can build a good, strong course. Northwell, because they were mentioned earlier, actually has a really good hybrid setup for their EMT refresher that I joke because a couple of years ago at the state conference, I sat down with him and showed him how to use Moodle and how to set it up and said that we wanted to, and he had the personnel and time and did it. And he did a really good job with it.
Money.
Right, and money. So I think if we ever did that, that's a great resource for this region where we could turn around and reduce some commute time because you'd only be commuting for laps as opposed to commuting for lectures.
The downside we've found is that it requires the students to have some intrinsic motivation, you know, and everything, you know, isn't just spoon-fed to them. And we've had a couple of instances where the distance learning programs have crashed and burned because the students have not held their end of the bargain up, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
You can't, we've all but delivered EMT training to your lazy boy. People have to sort of step their game up a little bit. And it's been very, very hard. In my area, the instructor's very creative, and she has, assigned internet research projects which which are in the place of certain elements of the actual course. And when people show up, she's there to collect their stuff, and like, ooh, I did good. And it's very disheartening, especially being the recipient of "you people at the state," which we get a lot of. You people at the state.
You hear that once in a while?
Every day. You've made it impossible for people to become EMTs. And I've been asked and told, how do we shorten the EMT class to like when I became an EMT? The Asker became an EMT in the mid-'80s when the course was 80 hours. We're not going to shorten the course for that. And my response to people who ask me that, no, aren't you going to shorten the course? Well, what did you want me to take out? Like hemorrhage control, fracture management,
yes, CPR,
breathing difficulty, oxygen delivery. I'm confused. You tell me. Here it is. What do you want me to remove? Well, I don't think they should spend so much time on medical emergencies. Okay, so since most of your calls are medical emergencies, what? Diabetes, seizures, whatever. Yeah, heart failure. I'm good. Tell me.
The bottom line is, and I keep saying it, is when you do the Carnegie unit calculation to figure out how many college credits the EMT class is worth, and that's any college, it's a standard calculation, it comes out to 11 credits. That's 11 credits at SUNY Cobleskill, that's 11 credits at GAVAC, that's 11 credits in F&B ambulance, it's 11 credits in the back of your fire department, your church basement, or your lazy boy. So it's still almost a full matriculated load at a college. So I think we just need to let our students coming into this know that this is not a hobby that you go into, a couple nights a week after you go to work. This is
reason
real work.
We had a couple high schoolers, seniors, asking about it, right? They're talking about it, and they've been doing a little investigating. Is it true? If I take the EMT course and I pass, I can't drive an ambulance until I'm 21.
That's an insurance.
No,
yeah, no,
it's not true.
But that's a deterrent for these kids to take the EMT course and to get a job.
Right.
Who's going to hire them if they can't drive the ambulance?
A lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they can hire, me to drive their ambulance. I'm over 21, but it's hard to find EMTs.
And there's a 3-year period there that they may not be able to draw a paycheck, in their area until they're 21.
We've also been asked to lower the age of, to get interest in high schools, and we have, I have really been against lowering the age, and I can tell you exactly why. I think, having done this a little while now, there's, regardless of our personal levels of maturity, I don't think you can take a teenager and throw them into, some little old lady's house where she's been sick for weeks at a time. I think that 18 is young, but I really, there's the real legal reason has more to do with labor law than it does us. But I think having having kids who are younger than 18 there are people who are very mature at 18, but most of us not so much. And what we've been working with across the state in a couple of schools is, there are actually kids who graduate who are not yet 18 and they want to do some school-based EMT training. And we've worked with the schools to register out exams. So, if a kid becomes, we'll only take it so far, because once the kid is done with the classes, their knowledge, crashes and burns. So what we've worked with schools to do is multiple course numbers, so that kids who become 18, May, June, July, and August is as far as we pushed it out, because they're so removed from the program that their success is not high. But it's hard.
Has there been any recent studies on how long an EMT actually stays active in the field? Obviously, present company excluded, so some of us have been here more than a few years.
We studied it in the early 90s, and we looked at it again in the last 5 or 6 years. The average person who becomes certified in the early 90s, they stayed certified for 2 refresher cycles. So they became certified at year 1, recertified year 3, recertified year 6, and then did not recertify after that. It's a little bit better now, but our provider public, like the average age of EMS providers across the state is 44. So I always say, Phil skews my data, but
And Gary's been certified 39 years.
I know Gary's killing my data too. But we were very concerned because we pulled out rural data, and in rural New York, the average age of EMS providers across our rural counties is about 48. In New York City, it's low, it's about 27, in the metropolitan area, because the younger people are working, But even when you go to the 50 stations, they're in their 40s and 50s also. So it's very concerning. They're not young people behind us.